Welcome to my house. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast, a production of Structure Tech Home Inspections. My name is Reuben Saltzman. I'm your host, alongside building science geek Tessa Murry. We help home inspectors up their game through education, and we help homeowners to be better stewards of their houses. We've been keeping it real on this podcast since 2019, and we are also the #1 home inspection podcast in the world, according to my mom. Welcome to the show. I wouldn't rather be doing anything else other than doing a podcast today on this gorgeous, warm, sunny day here in Minnesota. It is
in January.
Yeah, it's
what, like 50
January.
Degrees out?
I think it's almost 50. Oh my goodness. Tessa, how you doing today?
Hey, Reuben. I'm doing well. Sadly, I have not been able to get outside yet today. I've been stuck at my computer all day. But how are you?
Oh, I'm great. You know what I did? I went and played around at disc golf today. I resolved to play at least twice a month, rain or shine, snow or no snow. And I went out on Saturday and it was ridiculously windy and it was like the worst I've ever played in my life. And I was freezing. I had a face mask on. All that was exposed to was my eyes. I took my glove off every time I threw and put it back on and my hands froze. And it was just like, I still had a great time, but today.
Perfect day for it.
Was so nice.
Perfect day.
So I'm just like, I'm giddy.
Nice. Yeah. Well, let's get into it, Reuben. We have a special guest on today.
Wait, before we bring on our guest, who is an IEB, Inspector Empire Builder member, whom I've met through IEB many years ago, I got to give a shout out to IEB. They're our show sponsors. And I'm going to give a reminder here about a business mastery class for solo inspectors that's coming up. Basically, this is for anyone who is a one-man or one-woman shop running their home inspection company. They want to learn more about how to be better at it. There's a class coming up from IEB. It's a 4-hour class. It's taking place on Tuesday, February 8th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time, God's time. The right time. Sorry, Philippe. And it's a 4-hour online class that's going to be led by Mark Hummel. I will have a link to this event in the show notes. And if you're interested, check it out. You won't be disappointed. And now let's bring on our guest, the one honking the horn. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, quick clarification question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did you say Tuesday, February 8th?
February. Oh, so did I say 8th? I meant to say 28th. Thank you.
Okay.
February 28th.
Okay, thank you.
Good clarification there. Because there probably is no Tuesday on the 8th, is there?
No, there isn't.
No. Good call. Okay. All right. Our guest.
Who's our guest?
Is there anything we could talk about before we bring him on one more time? We've got, drum roll, we've got Philippe Heller. Philippe, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really well. It's the year's starting to pick up, and that's always a good time for those of us in the home inspection industry. It seems like the winter months can be long and protracted, and we all sit around waiting for the market to get into gear. And so we're starting to see that. It's sputtering along, and so that's good. It's good.
Okay. And Philippe, you're out of the greater San Diego area in California. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And all right, what's your weather like there today? Maybe I could feel really good and have temperatures close to yours. What do you got?
It is a frigid 55 degrees today.
Ooh! I almost got to be.
Thus the fur-lined jacket, fleece, everything. Pretty chilly for San Diego.
Oh, well, that just really makes my day. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry for you, Philippe, but anytime that we're close to California weather in January, it just doesn't.
It's a good day.
It's not so bad. It's a good day.
Yeah.
Well, so Philippe, we've got you on the show today because, we're just coming off this big series of interviewing other home inspectors throughout the country about regional inspection differences. I considered having you on, but we ended up having Mike Casey on because he's kind of similar to your climate. But you've got something I really want to talk about, and it's related to all the fires that were happening in California for the better part of the beginning of this year. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Went on for weeks of endless fires. Yes.
Yeah. And so I actually had somebody write in with a suggestion like, hey, maybe you could do a podcast about what home inspectors could look for to make sure that homes are adequately fire protected. And here in Minnesota, I have no idea. I mean, that's just not a thing that we deal with. I mean, I am like an infant when it comes to any of that. We don't do any of that with our houses, but my understanding is you guys have got some pretty strict rules about what you've got to do to protect your houses from these spreading wildfires. And Philippe, I happen to remember that your company does special inspections just for this. And I thought, what better guy to have on to chat about this, what home inspectors might look for in these fire-prone areas. So, Philippe, can you, and you know what? All right, I set it up. I talked about why we're having you on the show.
Sure.
But before we just get into it, let's hear about you. You've never been on the podcast. I want to hear about your journey.
First-time guest.
Yeah.
Sure.
How did you get into this business? What is Tanya up to these days? And all that other good stuff.
Excellent question. So it's very interesting. So back in, we're celebrating, actually we're in our 21st year, the company. And way back when in 2004, when I started, I think it was kind of a traditional story where I was just fed up with my corporate job. I had a string of jobs working for big companies. After college, I worked at at SDG&E, which is our local utility. Not a cool job like a lineman or anything, but just a nerdy behind the computer doing load research is what it was called. And it was great because I learned a lot about the electric industry, how electricity is generated, distributed, conserved, offset to reduce the amount of power plants you need. It was called demand side management. Anyway, great job. And that was in Northern California. That was in San Diego. I moved north and worked for GE Power Systems. The small company I was working for, was developing software to help run power plants, cogeneration power plants, efficiently. So there I was working with a bunch of engineers, a super smart crew. And I learned a lot about, thermodynamics, more about electricity, etc. Then I moved back to San Diego in 2000 and had some jobs at the local cable companies, Time Warner and Cox, and literally hated every day of it. Like I had such bad management there, and I literally felt sick to my stomach. And I was a single dad, one daughter, and I thought, what am I going to do? I got to do something. I want to do something where I could maybe spend more time with my daughter and be more available to her in a job that is fulfilling, etc. So I thought somebody had told me that was in the run up before the '08 crash. And somebody mentioned that, hey, home inspections are something that are in demand and there's never enough home inspectors. And, with your background, maybe you should look into that. And I did. I researched and I thought, well, I know about electricity. I know about heat exchangers and, obviously that's HVAC equipment. And I've lived in a lot of houses, so I figure I'm perfect for this, right? I know everything. And so I set about starting this company, and I thought, like many, I would do it part-time. And I like I said, I hated my corporate job, but I set this up and I thought, hey, I've built websites, I had little e-commerce sites. This is when, guys were still doing the 3-ring binder thing or NCR forms, handwritten. I'm going to computerize this. I'm going to have a website where people can schedule online. Like I'm going to bring this whole thing. I'm going to, because I knew about thermodynamics, because that is used to evaluate rotating machinery in power plants. I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to just really raise the bar. And that's what I set out to do. But I was just miserable at my regular job. And I watched the movie Office Space. Have you ever seen that movie, Office Space?
Yes.
I just watched it again recently. It holds up.
It's so good.
It does.
It's so good.
It resonated with me so strongly. The cubicles, hiring people above you that are completely unqualified, all this stuff. And I said, literally, I identified with it. I sat there on my couch after watching it, just like, I got to quit. Like, that's killing me. I feel sick going to work every day. And I did. I called my boss and I said, I'm not coming in anymore. and I quit and just plunged into the home inspection thing full time. Now, my timing was great. I would hate to be getting into this business right now or last year or the year before because of the, supply problems. When I got into it, it was booming. And so a strong market combined with really being able to change the game, it was just great timing and a great offering. And I got really good traction almost immediately. And it was off to the races from there. We even did well during the '08 crash because so many investors got into the market that they were hiring us to evaluate the house. So there were still a lot of transactions going on. A little bit different. The crash, people have to understand, the crash back in '08 was about the value of these properties, right? People got upside down because they were taking out loans they couldn't afford, and then they went to a fully amortized, and they just had to walk away. So there were all these great houses that were selling for cheap, and anybody with money could buy. There were thousands of houses for sale. So it was a really good time for us. It's a little bit different than now where there's just no inventory, even though prices are sky high. There's just limited transactions in our market. Southern California has been hit really hard for the last 3 years in a reduction in that. So anyway, that's what happened. And I started hiring and growing, and we became the largest home inspection company in San Diego. And we work in the counties above us, Orange County and Riverside, but we don't have that much presence up there. San Diego's huge. And at the height of everything, we had 20 inspectors and 3 sewer scope technicians that were just dedicated to doing sewer scopes. And we have had to scale back a little bit over the last couple of years just because we couldn't support everybody. There wasn't enough business going around. But yeah, that brings us to here. I've been out of the field now for, about 6 years. Which is interesting now because I still love it. Like I'll go to houses and I'm always looking at stuff, but I'd probably have to go through training again to get back into it because a lot of stuff has changed.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've got such similar paths, Philippe. So much. And what is Tanya up to these days? Tanya and Philippe are they're partners in the business.
Yep.
We
purchased 3 years ago, we purchased a termite and pest control company. So she also helps me run that. And she's great at developing people, developing leadership, etc. But her passion is children. When I met her, she was the head counselor at an after school program. And that's really where her heart is. And her mom is an elementary school teacher at a private Christian school. And she's actually there today because they have a field trip and she likes to help her mom. Once every few weeks, she'll go down and volunteer just because that's what her passion is. But she's still very involved with the Women of IEB group and planning the women's calls and the retreats. And she loves doing that. So she's a little bit less in the day-to-day with the companies because we have really good leadership team and she's not needed. And we haven't been hiring so much lately. But anyway, that's where she's at today.
Okay. All right. Well, tell her hi for me.
Thanks for sharing that story, Philippe. And I think that's an inspiration to hear kind of where you were at and where you're at today, because I think a lot of people have experienced what you're describing as, the office space scenario where you get stuck in this corporate job or you get stuck at a job that you don't love and it just drains you and you get burnt out and you're frustrated and you're just a zombie getting through life. And it's like, there's more to life than this. What can I do to change it? And it usually takes a leap of faith and it's really scary, but clearly you are intelligent and you're resourceful and you're entrepreneurial and you're passionate about what you do and it shows. And so it's cool. Yeah, it's cool to hear where you're at today.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love
we want to dive in. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I love it that you're dealing with a lot of people every day, and I love the history of houses, and so I was really inspired to do it. I loved it. I mean, if it was 6 days a week, whatever, I would just do it because I loved it so much. But then, it evolves where you get to be a little bit. You have to run the business. Somebody has to run the place, and it got to the point where it's like, okay, I need to step back, and we had enough people to support me not being in the field. But yeah, and what's interesting too is how we've developed so many services. Reuben, you touched on our new services that focuses on, creating a defensible home so it can resist wildfires. And so to be developing new services has been really fun to watch. My team is really good at that. And to be, kind of behind the scenes watching that happen has been real rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would love to hear more about what that service looks like. When did you start offering it? And what do you guys do? And what pointers could you give to other home inspectors who are doing this? And I mean, so let's just start off. How did you first start doing this? How long ago was it?
So we always reported on things that might be a hazard to a home, like excessive brush or shrubs near the house or tree overhanging. But what really pushed us to create a service about this is a few years ago, the state of California came out with a law called AB 38. And it made it the responsibility of the seller to disclose to the buyer whether or not the home complied with two things. One was defensible space, if it was in a high fire risk area. And defensible space has to do with the distance between the house and combustibles, brush, trees, shrubs, things like that. And number two was whether or not the house complied with the building code as of 2010 in California, which pertains to what's called home fire hardening. And those are aspects of the structure itself built to help the home withstand the spread of a wildfire. So it had to do with things like the size of the openings in the vents, eaves. Are they open and exposed? Is there wood or are they enclosed? So certain things like that. Remember that we were talking about weather when we first started. And something people forget is that Southern California experiences what are called Santa Ana winds every year between November and January. And these are really strong, near hurricane strength winds. They can be 60, 80, even 100 miles an hour. And they come from east to west, which is unusual, right? Normally we have an onshore flow here predominantly. And that means that it's coming from the desert and it's super dry. And very strong. And when we have protracted periods where we've had no rain, which is very common, what they call the chaparral or the growth that is natural on the hillsides becomes super brittle. But it has a high oil content. So it's like oak, shrub oaks and things like that, chaparral and things. You look at the mountains, you don't realize that these shrubs are like 10 feet tall and almost impenetrable. You can't just walk through it. It's like hedgerows. And so when you combine a fire with 60 or 80 mile an hour winds, you can imagine that it's very difficult to control them. And so with the advent or the passage of AB 38, we thought CAL FIRE, our fire department, cannot possibly keep up with the number of inspections that was required to keep up with the escrow time frame. They don't care about escrow. They don't care about real estate agents. So we created a template and an inspection to inform the buyer and the seller as to whether or not they comply and make suggestions on what they can do, just like a home inspection, to comply with not only the defensible space requirements, but also the home fire hardening details and elements of a house.
Okay.
Does the state of California require some sort of certification for people doing these inspections?
No, it's just like a home inspection. We're not a licensed state. So
okay.
Yeah, we can inspect.
Which is surprising. It's California.
I know everything's regulated, everything except for home inspections. And then you have Texas, which is very unregulated, except for home inspections, which is highly regulated. I don't understand. But
so same thing for Florida. Yeah.
What we did is we went through and really studied the defensible space requirements, which talk about the distance from the house to combustibles such as play structures and trees and shrubs and, what are the clearances? Because remember, it's not just about a fire. It's a wind-driven fire, which, and there's a ladder effect. So let's say a fire starts at the bottom of a hillside or a canyon. Well, the ladder effect is how it jumps from one shrub or tree to a bigger tree, and it climbs up this hillside and burns the house on the top of the hill. So therefore, that house on top of the hill has to have a wide margin between the shrubs on the hillside and the home, so that hopefully that fire doesn't spread to the home.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. And is there some specific distance you need to have?
Yes, and it depends on, what you're talking about, whether it's 50 feet or 100 feet. And it has to be on your property, right? You're not responsible for things outside of your fence line or your property line. Now in California, they want 50 feet of clearance, but San Diego has more stringent requirements, which is 100 feet. Now, does that mean you can't have any plants on your property? No, of course not. You can, but they have to be spaced out from one another. And if you have a big pine tree or something, you have to clear the bottom branches. So if there is a fire along the shrubs on the ground, it's much harder for it to spread up to the bottom branches of the tree. So you have to clear all the branches up to 10 feet. You could have a 60-foot tree, but there's no branches on the bottom. So it's very hard for fire to start, spread up to the branches.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. This is a whole different way of thinking. And it's so interesting to me. Do you have to have, does a house have to kind of pass all of these criteria in order to qualify for insurance? Like, are insurance providers involved in this?
It's very interesting here. Insurance companies will write a policy during escrow. So you buy in a house and you think, okay, I got the insurance and my lender's happy. And then only after, within the next 30 days or something, do they evaluate the property, and then they can come back. We did a podcast with a gal who moved into our neighborhood, and within a month after moving in, she was faced with over, I think it was $5,000 worth of brush and tree trimming, because the insurance company said, we're gonna drop you. You got too much stuff here. This is too high of a risk. And so you would think, just like many other things, you would think that insurance companies would ask the home inspector about what's the plumbing condition like, what's the roof like a 4-point. We're starting to see that now, but it was not the norm, which blows my mind, because they should be asking us, they should be requiring. But if I was the insurance company, I'd say, wait a minute, before I insure you, I want to make sure your house is good. It's less likely to have a leak. I want to make sure the roof's okay, and I want to make sure that it's not going to burn down. And only recently are they starting to ask for that.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's talk about, if you don't mind, the second aspect of it, besides the distance from combustibles, is the new building code, which requires certain elements of the home to be impervious or resistant to wind-driven fires. So what does that
look like?
Yeah, these are called fire hardening features. So so these are, we classify homes here in high fire risk zones and very high fire risk zones. And if a home is in one of those, they have to have things like double pane windows on the exterior perimeter walls, no matter what. They have to be tempered glass. They have to be tempered double pane windows. And obviously, all new homes have to have double pane windows. They have to be tempered. And the idea is that they're less likely to shatter and fall out, allowing sparks to come in, embers to come in during wind.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's what happens if there's a fire outside the house. They're so hot. You guys have probably seen pictures. We don't have vinyl siding here really, but the side of the house melts. There's so much heat, and traditional plate glass windows will just crack and shatter, allowing embers to come in. So homes in high and very high fire risk areas have to have tempered glass to reduce that risk. Soffit vents, gable vents, any kind of roof vents, dormer vents, have to have wire mesh that has an opening of no bigger than 1/16 of an inch. Okay. So it's tiny.
How can any air get in?
No, air can get through, because it's like a window screen, right? It's pretty much that fine mesh.
One nice spring or summer day in Minnesota, and that would be clogged up with cottonwood.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so we have that because a lot of embers, even though most of our houses are stucco and tile roof, due to the wind-driven nature of these fires that spread, embers would blow into the dormer vents or gable vents and set the attic on fire. And it was very hard to put it out once that started. Or a Spanish style profile on the roof, embers would get up in there if they didn't have a bird stop at the end, and they would set the roof deck on fire underneath the tile. So bird stop is required. Crazy. That's a home fire hardening feature. Fine mesh screen in the vents is a feature. Tempered glass at the exterior is a feature. All those things play into decks have to be a grade A type of wood or material that is very hard to get going. You can't just use cedar anymore for a deck or redwood anymore. You have to use like Brazilian hardwood or something that doesn't burn, class A wood, because embers would fall on it and, set the deck on fire or a patio cover, and then that would spread to the home. So those are the home fire hardening features. Now, when we inspect a home that was built prior to 2010 and doesn't have these home fire hardening, just like any building code, the seller is not required to upgrade the home. But it is good to tell the buyer that this house no longer complies with current code and is at an elevated risk of fire, a wind-driven fire, because it doesn't have it. And you may want to, and there are companies that will come in and retrofit your home for all this stuff. And, so, insurance companies know this. And if your house was built prior to that, they're going to charge you more for a premium. But we created a really good report, just like home inspection reports, with pictures. We put the measurements in there. We tell them exactly what to do. We give them a plan of action, similar to like you guys might inspect a home and say, hey, this house was built prior to the requirements of GFCI receptacles, wherever, in a bathroom, by a pool, whatever. And we recommend that you get it installed for safety. Well, that's sort of the same ideology when we're inspecting an older home, idea being that the new homeowner will either try and negotiate maybe for the upgrades or act on that after they move in and take steps to really protect their home.
Sure.
Wow. Are there companies out there that just specialize in that?
Yes. Yep. They will do roof vent retrofits and even at Bite Away, our termite pest control company, we sell little soffit vent plugs that have fine mesh screen. Now we're selling it to keep the termites out, because 1/4-inch chicken wire or wire cloth, they're going to let any big bug in there, right? It's not going to stop a termite. I don't think you guys have a big problem with termites because it's so cold, but we do. We have drywood termites that swarm and they just go right into the attic. So we sell these very fine mesh screens. So we're actually, Tessa, we're going to make ourselves available to rescreen all these roof vents from our perspective to keep termites out, but it'll have the secondary benefit of keeping most embers out of the attic.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Is the same thing true for like intakes on combustion air vents or like an air-to-air exchanger intake? You have to have this really fine mesh screen on the exterior of the house?
No, we don't have, it's interesting, we don't have a lot of heat exchangers because we don't have that cold. We just don't have that here very much. So it's mostly just pretty much wide open combustion, whether it's a tankless water heater. And think about it, if an ember went in there, it's just going to go into the combustion chamber where there's fire already. So it's really probably not that much of a risk to if embers did go in there.
Let me clarify. Maybe I didn't say that correctly. So what about air-to-air exchangers that are just for bringing in fresh air for the house? So to provide, air exchange and to mix it with, the air in the house. Usually there's an intake and an exhaust. And houses in California, I'm sure, are being built pretty airtight to be energy efficient. They probably require some sort of like balanced whole house ventilation. Is that a problem installing those systems because of the intakes on the exterior of the house? Or what kind of special install do you have to do to meet the fire requirements?
On those, I'm not, you got me on that one. I would have to research that. I don't think we check. I don't think that's part of the home hardening of having screens on those. It'd probably be a good idea just to keep rodents, because, we've all seen where, squirrels or other birds will put things in there. So they are vented, but I'm not sure it's the same requirement because it's not, there shouldn't be any combustible material inside. So again, even if an ember did go in there, it's a metal heat exchanger for the fresh air exchange. So I don't think that has the same risk to it.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'll look in that.
Well, and kind of along those lines, do you know of anything like in your guys' market that or does your inspection company talk to clients about ways to try and improve air quality in the home? Because I know with all the fires we've had recently, and not just this year, but previous years, all the smoke in the air, the fine particulates, getting into people's homes and causing health issues. Like, does California focus on air quality? And do you guys specifically talk to clients about that and make recommendations on things to do to the house to make it better?
Well, California is very strict on air quality for sure. And what's interesting is that most homeowners insurance companies will remediate your attic if you got a lot of ash in your attic. They will come in and vacuum it out, and it should be no charge to the homeowner to keep it, healthy. They don't want all that ash. But during a wildfire, it's kind of like you're on your own. You need to keep your house closed, keep your filter in good working order, and just recirculate the house air.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just like batten down the hatches, everybody. Close your windows, close everything, and keep your internal filters clean and the air moving in your house. Okay.
One interesting other part of the building code is that after the Paradise Fire a few years ago in California, where a lot of people died, I forget the number, but it was close to or just over 100 people died. A lot of them were old. And the problem is that they couldn't get out of their garage. It was older people. They couldn't reach, or it was the release was missing. And so, or the power was out, and that people didn't know how to open the door. And so they stayed in their home and they died.
Oh, no.
So there was a change to the building code where all new garage door openers must have a battery backup, so that it will continue to function even if the power goes out. And
wow.
Yep. And another mistake people made is when they were evacuating is they left their garage door open. So they'd get out, they'd manually open it, lift it up, back the car out and take off, and they'd leave their garage open, which, embers blew in, and a lot of houses burnt down simply because of that. So, on my house, I replaced the button with a timer that, and you could set it 5, 10, or 15 minutes. It will automatically close the door. But that's something else where they made battery backup garage door openers a requirement when they're replaced in a new build, or when you replace, so that the elderly, whoever, could continue to open the door to escape the home.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
What about different types of sidings that are there special materials or brands that you see out there commonly that are less likely to catch on fire?
Most of our houses are stucco, or they're like hardy siding, cement fiber board.
Yeah.
Gosh, asbestos was great for this, right? It's one of those products that worked really well, like lead, but it just wasn't very healthy for us. But yes, most houses are built, certainly in high or very high fire areas. Most of them are stucco, and now the eaves, you don't see any wood exposed, because the fire could burn and then lick up the side of the stucco and set the eaves on fire, again setting the roof on fire. And because it's tile, it's very hard to put it out. So now all the underside of the eaves are enclosed with stucco. We don't have vinyl to speak of in California. And so stucco's great, but it might deflect the flames and concentrate them on some exposed wood. So now all that is sealed up, so you minimize the amount of wood that's exposed. Another problem is people don't clean their rain gutters, and they don't cover them, so they fill with pine needles or oak leaves or whatever all year long, and an ember goes in there, and it doesn't take much, and it sets all that on fire, and the little bit of wood decking that's exposed, the wood sheathing, catches and again spreads. So it doesn't take much to get a house going. And just like a blast furnace, when you apply that much air blowing on it, it's going to spread like a campfire, right? You just fan it and it takes off.
Now, Philippe, I'm wondering, are there any other special systems that people can pay a specialty contractor a boatload of money to install that will have some type of electric shutters where you'd have steel going over the windows and the openings? Are there some ridiculous systems that people install that do stuff like that?
Well, I like those storm windows that I've always seen them advertised, like in Florida where there's hurricanes, whatever, that roll down. I think that's really smart. So the basic one is people will run some PVC and put some sprinklers on the roof. The effectiveness, it's not great, because if it's windy, the water may not go where you need it to go. The other ones, there are some, you asked about specialty. Yes, there are companies that will sell fire retardant systems. So they have like sprinklers, essentially, And most new houses in those areas have like commercial grade, well, they look like commercial sprinklers built into the interior of the house. That doesn't save your house, right? Those are built for life safety to get you out of a burning house. But these specialty companies can set you up with the fire retardant that you can either manually spray, like the fire's coming, you can spray the outside of your house and it's like a gel that sticks to your house and will keep it from catching on fire. Most people they don't spend the money to get that, and they're victims, because like a burglar alarm, right? Most burglar alarms are sold the day after they get broken into, not before. An easy one, and you can buy these even at like Harbor Freight. They're not very expensive, but you can get gas-powered water pumps. And if you have a swimming pool or a pond or whatever, you throw one end into the pool and you may be the first line of defense before the firefighters can get there. Because when you have a house, if you have a wildfire that's burning hundreds of acres, they're so spread thin, it's ridiculous. And you may be the only one. So those people in Pacific Palisades recently, many of them who were able to save their homes, had a gas-powered pump, and they fought the fire themselves. They wetted down
their pool water,
their house, and they saved their house. A little bit risky, because you got to stay there and fight that fire. But
wow,
that's probably the least expensive way to, try and protect your own home. If you're not going to set up a really good irrigation, again, the problem is the water, right? You heard about Pacific Palisades running out of water. Part of it was due to massive mismanagement on the local government and the water district. Part of it was just that the fire was so huge. And we've experienced too in San Diego. So many hydrants are open that there's no pressure because every firefighter is fighting it.
Sure.
And interestingly, where I live, it's called Ramona. It's kind of inland in San Diego County, and it's elevated about 1,500 feet. We have an airport there, and that's where they fly the air attack from Southern California. Those are the planes that drop the retardant. Well, all of our water up there gets pumped from a town called Poway at the bottom of it. The power lines back in 2003, the power lines burnt down. So the pump station was non-functional. And we have nine huge water tanks around our town, but they were consistently being used to fill the planes and fight the fires that were burning. And the whole system emptied in our town.
Oh, no.
So, and we didn't have any new water coming up, being pumped up from Poway, from what we call down the hill, right? So they have fixed that since, right? We have a lot of redundancy and we have generators and all this stuff. But it was a case where there was just so much demand on the water system that it failed. And that's part of what happened up in LA recently is there were just so many fires, a lack of water, terrible maintenance, and there were just so many hydrants open at once that there just wasn't any pressure. And that they just had to sit back and watch the fires burn.
Well, it's running water is something I completely take for granted.
Yep.
I just expect
we
to
have
open
a
my
lot of it
faucet
here
and
in the
water comes
Midwest.
out. I don't appreciate it the way I probably should.
Well, that's why those pumps are so invaluable because, you say, well, I have a hose, right? I'll just hose down my house. Not if it's not working, right? Because the firefighters are taking all, they tell you, don't do that because now you're taking pressure away from the firefighters. So they really frown on people doing that. But if you've got your own pump and you've got, pools of 20, 30, 50,000 gallons, you got a lot of water there, you can do what you want with that.
Sure. Okay.
Wow.
Love it. And now for the inspections, is this something you just include with the home inspection, or is this an add-on service? How does that work?
We did recently for the month of January because of the fires. We did include it as a promotion, right? It's two things. We wanted to just use it for a little bit of exposure, right? Like that we do these inspections. So even if you're not worried about it now, hey, if you're a realtor and your client's buying a house in a fire-prone region, have this inspection done. And the other side of it was, hey, if you're a homeowner, call us and we can do this for you so that that you can take steps to protect your home. So we did do that. Otherwise, we charge between, if it's an upgrade and it's an add-on, it's like $150 bucks to add on, because the guys are already inspecting most of it. So it's pretty simple addendum to the report for them to do. They've taken their pictures and they just add some measurements and all the comments are built in. If it's a standalone, it's like $350 because it does take an inspection slot, and we got to make it worth our guy, our time to send somebody out there, and the lost opportunity to do a full inspection. And it's well worth it. Like, our report's really solid.
Yeah. Wow.
Very cool. Well, this has been enlightening. Thank you, Philippe.
I was just going to say, I'm just processing everything that you said, Philippe. It's a completely different world that you're living in, and you've got all these hazards that we don't even think about up here in Minnesota. So it's scary, but it's also very interesting of what a different job and inspection entails where you are versus where we are up here in Minnesota.
Yeah. And I think you could say that too, like if we went to the Southeast and had to do hurricane. Like, I have no idea. Yeah. I don't even know how to inspect a basement because we don't have them here, right? So, it is. Yeah. I love that topic that you guys have of the different regions and what is required. Your insulation requirements are far different than ours. We have a lot of houses in San Diego that don't have air conditioning at all because they're along the beach and it's beautiful and they don't care. They don't need it even without insulation. Right. And a lot of post World War II houses that just simply don't have insulation, like a little gravity heater in the living room, and people don't complain. It's fine. So I love it. Every region has something unique, and this is one that we deal with every year. And it's just the question now. There's the whole other side of that, which is how are these fires starting? Okay, so our utility companies are very proactive, and if there's going to be high winds, they will proactively shut the power down. They'll shut it off. So we'll have these, blackouts because they're worried. They've been sued many times because it's their power lines that fall, they spark these huge fires, and then they're on the hook for billions in damage. So we do have that where we may have 3-4 days of no electricity. We put in a whole house generator years ago in our house, and I love it. So that way our whole house is lit up. We have that. And then, you guys have probably seen on the news, we do have a big homeless problem out here because the weather is nicer and we have a big homeless problem. And many of the fires do start in those encampments. And, on one hand, can you blame them? They're trying to stay warm. They're trying to cook. They're trying to do this and that. And they may not, think about, hey, it's windy. Maybe we shouldn't start a fire. But it is the cause, the genesis of many of these fires is that these encampments are the source, for sure.
Sure. I can see that.
Yeah. Yep. Which goes to an even bigger problem.
That's a whole different
housing
topic.
Crisis. Yeah. That's a whole different topic. Wow. We could go on and on, Philippe, and this is fascinating, but I feel like we've got a pretty full podcast. I don't know. Is there anything else, Reuben? Did you have any other questions you wanted to ask Philippe before we wrap this one up?
That's everything I wanted to cover. Is there anything else we should have talked about or asked you about, Philippe?
I think that that's the thing is like, for home inspectors, don't be afraid. As a matter of fact, I have a philosophy that's 90% of what most professionals do is exactly the same, whether it's by standards of practice or laws or rule regulation, whatever. I don't care if you're a real estate agent or an attorney or a house painter or whatever. 90% of what you do is the same on paper as everyone else. Builders, whatever. We differentiate ourselves in the 10% margin around that, right? It's our quality of work, like a painter. Anybody can put paint on a wall. How well do they prep it? How well do they tape it? How well do they clean up? All these different things that allows one painter to charge a lot more than another. Same as home inspectors. Don't be afraid and keep an eye on new regulations, new building codes, new things like that, new real estate requirements that can enable you to take advantage of that. Take that opportunity to come up with a unique service that separates you from everybody else. Because cumulatively, when you look at all your competition and yet you offer things like sewer scope and mold testing and maybe radon, like we don't have radon, so I can't do that. That's another difference. We have no radon. You have radon, you have fire inspection, maybe hurricane, wind mitigation, all these different things. Stay abreast of what's going on in your local area so that you could be first to market. And it gives you something else to talk about. And we always talk about a one-stop shop. Well, really be that one-stop shop. it gives you the opportunity to teach and speak about things other than your shiny tools. You want to say, hey, I want to be here to educate you on this new real estate law, regulation, whatever it is. And here's how we can help with that. So, there's always opportunity, and make sure that you have an A+ team that's scheduling and upselling. And, you can turn a $500 inspection into a $1,200 inspection with the right mix of services.
Yeah, and you're giving people stuff that they need. It's just you're a one-stop shop. They don't need to get all this from all these other people.
Correct.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, great insight.
So good to catch up with you. So good to hear about all this stuff. Part of the reason I still do this podcast and I still love doing it is just all that I get to learn. I mean, this is forced learning for me. Yep. And I love
learning
hearing
new
about
things
this
every
it's
podcast. Yeah.
Right. New technology. When I started there were no tankless water heaters. There were no hybrid anything, like heat pump, water heater. None of that stuff existed. So there's always something new. And I appreciate you doing this.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
thanks, Philippe, for coming on.
And if people want to reach out to you, find more information about you, how can they find you, Philippe?
So our website, real easy, SD Inspect, like San Diego, sdinspect.com. And all our contact information is on there. And, or you can, if you're in IAB, I think pretty much everyone knows how to get a hold of me. If you're not in IAB, consider it. It's a great community. And, we've developed not only good skills and knowledge, but really good friendships along the way.
Amen to that. 100%. Agreed. Yep. Well, for our listeners, if you have any questions, thoughts for us, you want to reach out, please email us. We read them all. It's podcast@structuretech.com. And we will catch you next time. Take care.